On August 30, 2018, the world learned that a single doctor had violated the trust of an entire sport, as former USA Gymnastics athletes flooded the courtroom with harrowing testimonies that revealed Larry Nassar had abused hundreds of young gymnasts while the sport turned a blind eye. The scandal that erupted that day would forever change the landscape of American gymnastics, expose systemic failures, and spark a national conversation about power, silence, and accountability. To understand how such abuse could fester for decades, we must first look at the foundations of USA Gymnastics. Formed in 1963, the organization grew from a modest coalition of clubs into the governing body for one of the nation's most celebrated Olympic sports. By the 1990s, American gymnasts were capturing medals on the world stage, and the sport enjoyed a surge of popularity fueled by lucrative sponsorships and television contracts. In this environment, athletes, often pre-teens and teenagers, were thrust into high-pressure training regimes, living away from home in elite training centers where coaches and medical staff held near absolute authority. Enter Dr. Larry Nassar, a former Air Force physician who joined the University of Michigan in 1990 and later became a trusted medical consultant for USA Gymnastics in 1996. Over the next 2 decades, Nassar was granted unparalleled access to the sport's elite athletes, providing treatment for everything from routine injuries to chronic pain. He was hailed as a pioneer in sports medicine, his name appearing in research papers, conference presentations, and promotional material for USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic Committee. Yet behind the veneer of professionalism, Nassar was conducting a systematic campaign of sexual assault, using his position to manipulate, intimidate, and silence his victims. The abuse began with a simple deception. Nassar told young gymnasts that the painful procedures he performed, most notably hip bone injections and pelvic exams, were necessary for their athletic performance. In reality, he was inserting his finger into their vaginas, an act he later described as a physiological technique. Over the course of his tenure, he abused at least 265 athletes, according to a 2018 federal indictment, though the true number may never be known. The victims ranged from future Olympians like Aly Raisman and Simone Biles to hopefuls who never left the training mat. How did such carnage remain hidden for so long? A web of institutional complacency, fear, and misplaced loyalty allowed the abuse to persist. Former USA Gymnastics officials, including then-President Steve Penny, were later accused of turning a blind eye, allegedly receiving complaints about Nassar's methods but dismissing them as inconvenient or unsubstantiated. The organization's internal reporting mechanisms were vague, and many athletes feared retaliation, loss of scholarships, or the end of their careers if they spoke out. The culture of silence was reinforced by a broader sports environment that prized winning above all else, encouraging athletes to endure pain rather than question authority. The first public crack in the wall appeared in 2015, when former gymnast Rachel Denhollander filed a civil lawsuit against USA Gymnastics and Nassar. In a powerful interview with the New York Times, Denhollander recounted her own experience, describing how Nassar's hands felt like a rope during an exam. Her bravery inspired other survivors to step forward, and by 2016, a cascade of accusations began to surface. In September of that year, the U.S. Center for Safe Sport launched an investigation, and the FBI opened a criminal case. The trial that began in January 2018 was a turning point in the quest for justice. In a packed federal courtroom in Birmingham, Alabama, dozens of former gymnasts took the stand, their voices echoing through the halls as they described the trauma inflicted upon them. Aly Raisman, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, testified that she was forced to endure Nassar's abuse for years, fearing that speaking out would jeopardize her place on the team. Simone Biles, who would later become the most decorated gymnast in history, delivered a brief but haunting statement. "I'm so sorry for any pain I caused, but I'm not going to stay silent." Their testimonies, alongside those of less-known athletes, painted a stark picture of a predator who exploited his trusted position. The evidence presented was overwhelming. Over 150 victims provided written affidavits, medical records corroborated the timing of the alleged assaults, and a trove of internal emails revealed that USA Gymnastics officials had been warned about Nassar's misconduct as early as 2015. In April 2018, after a week of emotional testimony, the jury deliberated for just 9 hours before delivering a verdict that sent shockwaves through the sports world. Larry Nassar was found guilty on 10 counts of sexual assault of a minor and sentenced to 60 years in federal prison, the maximum allowable term. The verdict was both a triumph and a bitter reminder of systemic failure. While Nassar was finally held accountable, the institutions that enabled his abuse faced their own reckoning. In the wake of the trial, USA Gymnastics leadership crumbled. Steve Penny resigned and later pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his knowledge of the abuse. The organization filed for bankruptcy protection in 2018, citing an estimated $2 billion in settlements with victims. The U.S. Olympic Committee suspended the national governing body, and Congress held hearings that exposed a culture of neglect and cover-up. In the years that followed, the impact of the scandal rippled far beyond the courtroom. Survivors banded together, forming advocacy groups such as the Gymnasts for Safe Sport Coalition, pushing for legislative change. Subscribe to The Verdict for more stories like this.